world. We have the largest penal system in the world, and just as slavery stood as a glaring exception to this wonderful American promise, so does imprisonment more than 2 centuries after the birth of this great republic. The United States criminal justice system consumes close to $300 billion a year and employs close to 3 million people, more than Walmart and McDonald's. And you know, everywhere you go, you see a Walmart and you see a McDonald's. And now with this manufactured crisis at our borders, private prison companies are seeing their profits soar. Private prison companies. When I started off by saying that I looked into your faces and I was imagining the fights that you have already fought, the battles that you have had. And I'm thinking about all of the shoulders that we all stand on. But I'm also thinking about today in particular. Thurgood Marshall. And all that he did, even with his problems, all that he did for the cause of freedom, and now his son sits on the board of directors of the largest private prison company in the world. When he sells stock, he gets a yield of $300,000 to $400,000 each time. It's hard to work for liberation when you are invested in the very system that is enslaving people. If you look at who's in our prison system, take a snapshot. We specialize in incarcerating the very poor people, the very black and the very brown people, the very black and the very brown children, men and women. We specialize in incarcerating the functionally illiterate and the mentally ill. Before the Montgomery bus boycott, before America's war on poverty, blacks in the United States were imprisoned at roughly 4 times the rate of white people. And today, a generation after our triumphs of the civil rights movement, African Americans are incarcerated at roughly 7 times the rate of white people. Nearly double the disparity before desegregation. What in the world? And although 2 generations have passed since Brown versus the Board of Education, we are still much more likely to invest in our penal systems than we are in our school systems. We turn our public school systems into training grounds for the youth detention centers, particularly when the children in those seats are black and when they are brown. And we keep saying that education is the key to freedom. And we wonder why our children have difficulty imagining that. Here's the question that we asked those ministers that day. Is poverty the intractable will of God for our people? Is poverty in prison the intractable will of God for our people? Is the cradle to prison pipeline, the poverty industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, is this all the intractable will of God? To take the theme that you all have lifted today toward abolition, I'm going to ask you to do something dangerous. I'm going to ask you to dream, to imagine, to invest in your own ability to see yourself beyond today. I'm going to ask you to protect and nurture and cultivate your ability to dream and imagine. And I'm going to admit for all of us that this is the thing, our ability to dream and to imagine. This is the thing that has been under constant assault, particularly since November 2016.
That's right.
It is exhausting to live in the United States of America. It's exhausting. And if you are not exhausted by the daily onslaughts of us on our spirits, then maybe we should ask, are you awake? Are you aware? Are you here? This is exhausting. Each and every day. Each and every day. We see the safety net that we worked so hard to put in place for our children and for our seniors being ripped apart with glee. We see police empowered by waves of hate and these extrajudicial killings with no consequences. And even in the midst of that, you have got to protect your ability to dream and to imagine. Because if this is not the intractable will of God for us, then what is? And no one else is going to dream that for us. That is our responsibility. The cavalry is not coming. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. I'm also going to suggest to you, I'm going to do more than suggest, I'm also going to declare to you that your dreams, your ability to imagine have to be bigger than you. They have to be bigger than us. They have to include other people. We have to imagine freedom that includes people who don't usually make it into our dreams. And for many folks, many black folks in the black middle class who forgot about a generation of young black men, I just want to lift the name of Khalif Browder. We would have dismissed. Your pants are hanging. You don't work hard enough. You're not doing well in school. You're not worthy of our attention and our mentoring. And so we don't include the Khalif Browders in our dreams and in our imagination. And this black child, Khalif Browder, sat in pretrial detention for years. Nobody advocating for him, suffering through solitary confinement, arrested at the age of 16. They accused him of stealing a backpack, which he did not do. Beaten by black corrections officers. Case bungled over and over again by a black woman judge. In the deafening roars of celebration when this judge was elected DA of Bronx County was a reminder that the people we say figure highly in our dreams for justice and civil rights and equality for all are often the casualties. They are the casualties of our ambitions. I was going to say, there is one who sits high and who at the end of the day will judge. We include that family who walked hundreds of miles to get to our border, to escape a country whose economy has been shattered because of our interference and our self-interest in their country. And we cry no tears when their children are ripped away from them. And our hearts don't break because we have not included them in the dreams that we have for ourselves. And because all of our struggles are interconnected, we have to include those who now sit on rescue boats, docked outside of Italy, those who have escaped slavery in Libya, and who are sitting there month after month after month, people who look just like you and me, and they're there as governments negotiate. And refuse to acknowledge that there is a vibrant slave trade right now in 2019. If you're going to take this theme toward real abolition, I would ask you to consider what Martin Luther King said to his staff at the SCLC. It was one of the lowest points in the civil rights movement, and King had spoken out against the Vietnam War, and you know what happened to him when he spoke out against the Vietnam War, and all the people who said that they marched with him across the bridge, left him by himself. But we had won the right to sit at lunch counters, but we didn't have the money to pay for the hamburgers. And so he and Marion Wright Edelman turned their attention to the war on poverty. And they dreamed of a poor people's campaign and of bringing poor people to Washington to cash the check that was owed. But his staff was discouraged. They saw this as a lost cause. We have always had the poor with us. And King said to them, my friends, don't shrink from lost causes. And don't be afraid to associate yourselves with outcasts and with marginalized people. He said, I would hope that we in the SCLC are the custodians of hope. I'm not talking about some kind of superficial optimism, which is a little more than magic. I'm talking about the kind of hope that has an in spite of quality. Hope for what you imagine. Freedom in spite of what you see. Work for equality, justice, the rights of all people in spite of what you see. We are not free. We are not free. Unless anyone think that this is a partisan conversation on today. I loved Barack Hussein Obama, as many of us did. But many of these issues that we are talking about were the same issues that we had to deal with 8 years of his administration, 8 years in the previous administration, and for every other president before them. These are not new issues. These are not new issues. We are not free. We are not free. And I'm here today at your very gracious invitation to amplify this call to you. And this is a call that has been ringing out long before the first enslaved person arrived here on these shores. It's a call that rang out when this country was born with this birth defect of white supremacy. It's the same call to action that our ancestors issued through their songs, their blood and their sweat and their refusal to die. It's the same call that was heard by Nat Turner and Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and Ida B. Wells and Vernon Johns. And it was heard by Ella Baker and Septima Clark and Martin Luther King and Ella Baker and Marion Wright Edelman and John Lewis and Diane Nash and you in this room. The countless, nameless foot soldiers, the freedom fighters, the freedom riders who braved dogs and water hoses and hooded night riders. It's the same call for freedom to be real for everyone in this land of abundance. The call to resist the structuring of our lives and our communities in ways that oppress other people. We cannot get free off the backs of other people. The ends does not justify the means. It's a call to deliver more than some superficial optimism that only serves to frustrate and quench the hope of people who take great risks just to bear hope in this land of in spite of realities. I'd ask you, let's never, ever, ever, ever engage in that useless, what would Martin do? Hand wringing. It's a waste of time. Because the question is, what will we do? What will we do? Martin King and Malcolm X lived with a gun pointed at their backs. And we give invocations at the State House. Who's afraid of us? Who's afraid? Is anybody trying to kill us? Who is afraid? Who's trying to quiet us? If you want to be a part of writing a better letter to the future than the one that you received, then step out on abolitionism. Decide that you are going to work for a future that maybe many people cannot see. But it is the future where all of us are free. That where none of us are left behind. Where we will never ever say, first it will be the men and then it will be the women. We will never ever say, because you are different, that you come from someplace different, that you love someone different, that your freedom is not equal to mine. Step out on abolitionism. Bring that spirit with you and let it rise up when you go into the classrooms where you teach, where you take care of your patients. Remember that with justice and mercy when you stand in the courtrooms over which you preside, where you prosecute and defend, by the way you hire the formerly incarcerated, in the boardrooms where you have access, in the same way that you model the beloved community into the struggling family who lives down the road from you, by resisting a government that will rip away children from their families, by finding yourself on the side of the poor, on the side of freedom, on the side of God, by reorienting your checkbooks to reflect your commitment. Use the voice that you have, the influence that you have to speak truth to power, to insist that the hope of poor people, of Black people, of marginalized people, of LGBTQ persons will not be frustrated and quenched by this government. Not on our watch. An abolitionist agitates. Isn't that right? An abolitionist agitates. Agitates for a better future than the one that she received. Agitates against the structures that they know only lead to diminished futures. Agitates against the mores and the values and the attitudes that endow the culture of incarceration, the culture of materialism, the culture of racism, the culture of gendered and orientation oppression. Regardless of who holds those values, agitate for all of our freedom if you want to be free. Because if I'm not free, you're not free. And I know it's hard because you're exhausted. I know it's hard because you've been working for a long time. I know it's hard because sometimes the hopes and the dreams of other people get heavy. And it's hard to carry yours and theirs too. Here's a tip. Let's just make them one. I know it's hard. But here's a blessing that I want to give to you, to offer to you, as you step out on this very, very rough road. It's a blessing that I have adapted from my Catholic brothers and sisters. It's the Franciscan blessing. And I've changed the words to match the urgency I feel. So here it is. May God bless you with discomfort and easy answers and half-truths and half-stories and superficial relationships so that you may live deep within your hearts. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and the exploitation of people so that you may work for justice and freedom and peace. May God bless you with tears. Tears shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and war, so that you may reach out your hand to comfort them and turn their pain into joy. May God bless you with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference even in these fights. May God bless you to believe that it is on you to turn this whole world right side up. May God bless you to write with your life a more powerful letter to the future than the one that you received. May God bless you to be bold, to honor your race, to honor your legacy, and to be unafraid to walk in dark places with songs of light, with songs of struggle, with songs of mourning that turn into victory, with songs of power so that you can do what no one else ever dreamed possible.